satanic pics.
Freshmen, though, were required to live on campus their first year, and one of the benefits of that was that we had unlimited access to the school cafeteria, aka the CAF. The CAF, it was pretty nice, boasting a salad bar, sandwich station, mini bakery, hot food with different menus daily, and pretty much every fountain drink that you can think of. I would get lunch and dinner there with my only friend at the time, and who is now my fiancé, might I add, and we began to notice this boy who was always at the CAF alone. It wasn't uncommon to see students eating there alone. My school had pretty poor community outreach or school spirit, but something was just, I don't know, really off about this kid. Like, first off, he had a very distinct look. This is important too because we recognized him multiple times over 3 years. His skin, it was extremely pale and had this sort of waxy flesh look to it that I struggled to describe, almost like he was made of wax, but he also had red curly hair, insert ginger joke here, I know, but a mouth a little too large for his face, but what was the strangest thing about him were his eyes. They were the same color as his hair, that bright red auburn. His iris was almost too big for his eye, and his pupils, they were extremely dilated. His eyes had a sort of bulging look to them too, very similar to Mark Zuckerberg, like they were trying to escape his face almost. It's hard to describe here, but he just had a very, I don't know, unsettling look to him. It just felt like there was something very wrong with him, like there was nothing inside of him almost. But his appearance wasn't what caught our attention at first, to be honest. What caught our attention was the amount of food that this kid would eat. Of course, having unlimited access to food, some kids went really overboard, right? But this kid, he was on another level altogether. He always had 5 or 6 cups of juice, soda, coffee, and 3 or 4 plates piled with food. Mind you, he was not large or overweight, but he would clear every plate and then just sit in his booth alone, staring into space with his headphones in. That was another thing too. He always had this blank, sort of vacant expression, always staring into nothing. Whenever you walked past his booth, you could hear that the music from his headphones was on full blast. We began to notice too that no matter what time we went to the CAF, whether it be for a late night snack, a breakfast, a random afternoon craving, he was just always there, sitting alone in the ruins of his empty plates. And we weren't the only people who noticed this strange behavior too. By second semester, people began approaching him. At first, just some girls jokingly saying something to the effect of, "We strive to be on your level," referencing his eating habits, and he just stared at them blankly. People began to ask if he was okay, if he would like to join them, but he always just stared, sometimes with a sort of knowing smile on his face, but would never reply, leaving the students to depart awkwardly. Once I even witnessed one of the CAF attendants telling him that he needed to stop spending all his time there. My friend that I always ate with became my boyfriend in the end, and we began to theorize what exactly this kid's deal was. We said maybe mental illness, or maybe he was a competitive eater, or he was trying to bulk up or whatever, but his behavior seemed too empty, too neurotic to be explained away by any of these. Our main theory, the one that I subscribe to now, it didn't come till much later. My sophomore year, I opted to live on campus again, and in the middle of my second semester, that was when COVID hit. My school, they allowed us to remain on campus until the school year was up, and due to some personal reasons for not wanting to go home, I remained in my dorm, and my boyfriend joined me and we quarantined together. That time was honestly just so strange because our campus became an incredibly liminal space without all the other students. Some others remained with us, but on any given day you would walk the entire campus and not run into another soul. My boyfriend and I, we started running the wooded trails on campus to get some exercise too. And one day, we stopped on one of the trails to do some burpees. As we did so, the kid from the calf emerged from the trees all of a sudden. Not on any trail, just walked out of the woods and started running toward us. This really caught us off guard because, we rarely saw anyone at this point, and he just made a beeline toward us. Right as he ran up on us, though, he just stopped, just smiled at us knowingly, as if we shared some joke. But it was not a smile. In fact, it was incredibly nasty, sinister even. I don't know if I felt that way because he had scared us, but something was definitely off. We had never spoken to him those times at the calf, but he definitely seemed to recognize us. The other thing that was weird was that he was now jacked, way taller and just larger than he had ever been freshman year. And it wasn't just that he gained muscle, he just seemed like he scaled up a whole lot. Like he hit a massive growth spurt, which I suppose is plausible, but it just seemed really off. Anyway, we were both obviously shaken by the experience, and began to joke that he had been eating so much to store up energy so he could level up or something. And one of us, I forget which, but we suggested that he looked so strange because it was a demon wearing a human skin and was eating so much to build strength for his demonic powers, and that's how he grew so quickly. Like I said, it began as a joke, but the more that we discussed it, the more it just seemed to explain not only his odd appearance, but his odd behavior toward other students, the empty look in his eyes. But here's where things went from just weird to, honestly, downright terrifying. So my boyfriend and I forgot about him eventually, and moved out of my dorm into an apartment a few blocks from school as we were still finishing, and because school was mostly online now, obviously, with COVID, and I liked the area. The same creek that ran the length of our school campus ran behind our complex, and as it was still COVID lockdown and we had nothing to do, we would often go on long walks up and down the creek. Now, one evening we went for a walk at dusk, and by the time that we got to the main road our apartment was on, it was completely dark. It was extremely quiet, and as we walked along the road, we saw that we were coming up on a man walking very slow and deliberate. My hackles were up immediately, as our apartment is in a pretty seedy area, and there was a lot of homeless and unstable people who sometimes hung out from the creek. And there was just something about his walk. It was so deliberate and predatory almost. As we crossed paths with the man, though, he walked even slower, and in the dim light of the street lamps, I realized that I recognized him as that same kid, that same waxy face and bulging eyes. I also realized that in one hand, he held a paper bag with something big and round in it, while in the other, he was holding a crowbar. Yeah, a crowbar. He slowed down even more as he passed us and turned his whole head and smiled at us. This time there was no mistake when I tell you that it was very threatening. It was the most sinister smile that I'd ever seen, in fact, and it had that same knowing in it, like he knew us and we shared some joke. He didn't say anything, just stared at us with his horrible eyes. I don't know if I just read too many creepypastas or if I'm overthinking things, but I knew on an animalistic level that he wanted to hurt us and wanted us to know that he could. After we passed him, we took off running, and when we returned to the apartment, we were both in a full-blown panic. Even my boyfriend, who tends to be pretty level-headed and skeptical, wanted to call the police at this stage. We did, and as soon as we began to explain the situation, we felt pretty foolish about it. They asked if he threatened us, and we said not verbally, but we felt threatened. Despite the absurdity of our call, they said that they would look into it because obviously there's not a lot of non-nefarious reasons to be walking around at night with a crowbar. But we never heard anything, and after that, we never saw him again. Now, to close this, I just think the whole thing is strange. How this kid kept showing up in our lives over 3 years and always seemed to recognize us, always seemed to want to let us know that he knew us. I think as people, we know when there's just something off about a person, right? When there's nothing going on inside. People have said as much about sociopaths that they've had run-ins with, but I want to know what you guys think. Did I encounter the Antichrist leveling up, a demon, or just a really troubled kid who became a dangerous man? Maybe he was just a depressed kid, but I will hold firm that we were, at the very least, threatened by this guy, that he wanted to hurt us, and that we encountered something or someone very evil. But what do you guys think? Also, I did some rudimentary Google searches for police reports in the area for, assault with a crowbar or whatever, and some other things that might have related to that, but in the end, we couldn't find anything. This incident took place about 4 years ago. I was living with my college friends in a shared apartment, but then I got married and I started searching for a separate room to start our new journey as husband and wife. I rented a house, which was a big double-story cottage. The owner, an old couple, they were living in the ground floor and they gave us a room on the first floor. So me and my wife, we moved into this new house. There was nobody else living in that cottage other than the four of us, old couple, me and my wife. Everything was going great too until once I experienced something unusual happening at night. I just felt like somebody was present in our house for whatever reason. I felt like someone was watching us, observing us. It was a really weird feeling, but nothing else really happened, and so life just went on. One day though, my wife decided to visit her parents for a couple of weeks and she left home. I was alone that night, and after finishing the episode of The Big Bang Theory that I was watching, as usual, I went to go and sleep in my bed. It was now the middle of the night, and I was in a deep sleep, and I started feeling like someone was trying to hold my hand and legs. But in the deep sleep, I couldn't really feel much, I guess. But slowly, the grip on my hands and legs became more firm, and it became so firm that suddenly I woke up. And now I could feel 100% that someone was holding my hands and legs. I could barely breathe. I was also feeling like somebody was trying to stop my breathing. I got scared. My heartbeat increased violently and I started sweating. I suddenly remembered that I should speak the religious chants that I learned growing up, but not a single word was coming out of my mouth. I became more desperate and gathered all of my energy to speak chants, but I couldn't. And then I realized that I should speak religious chants in my mind, and this is where I started feeling relieved as the grip on my hands, legs, and on my throat began to loosen. I now began speaking, and I started chanting religious chants out loudly, and slowly, very slowly, everything became normal again, and eventually I sat up in bed, and I just wondered what the heck had happened. After some time, I went back to sleep and nothing else happened that night. After my wife came back, we shifted to a new rental house, and since then I haven't experienced anything similar again, which is a bit strange, right? Around 3 months ago, my younger brother woke up screaming bloody murder at around 4 a.m. in the morning, waking up the entire house. After my mother and I came running to see what was happening, he was downstairs crying and screaming that there was a man in his room. After calming him down, he told us the full story. At first, he was dreaming about hands coming from the curtains and reaching out to grab him. After waking up, the hands were still there apparently, but now they were around him on the bed. He shot out of bed screaming, only to be met by a dark figure lurking in the corner of his bedroom. He ran out of his room, down the stairs, and saw my mother standing there. Only my mother and I were just coming out of our rooms to see what all the screaming was about, so that wasn't our mother. My mother and I never saw the figures, only heard the screaming, but my brother swears that they were real and he wasn't dreaming anymore. He did see the real us coming down the stairs, and when he looked back, my mother was gone. He describes it as the scariest thing that he's ever been involved in. Now, About a week ago, a similar thing happened once again, and there were screams. Not as severe as the first time, but still loud enough to wake all of us up. My brother, he was in the hallway crying again. He had seen my deceased dog on her hind legs, with red eyes and a satanic symbol staring at him. I'm not entirely sure if this was a nightmare this time, but my brother is not someone who is easily scared or panicked, so it definitely leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. My first instincts say that it was just dreams and maybe sleep paralysis. I'm not too familiar with paranormal things, so I was hoping to maybe get some pointers here as to what this could be. I'd be lying if I said that I've never felt weird in our house, but I never thought much about it, I guess. It's just an ordinary Dutch family house with no prior history of paranormal activity. I'll try and answer any questions below in the comments section, since I don't really know what other info you might need to help, but I'm happy to provide whatever you need. This is an old story from when I used to live in the dorms during my time in college. This happened about 5 years ago, and this dorm has a full history of, well, people ending their lives and all sorts of tragic events. So much so that the dorm windows are only allowed to be open a little bit. So, I lived in a huge apartment in New York City with 3 big rooms. 3 in one, 3 in the second, and 2 in the third, my room. The rooms were really far apart, and there were 2 bathrooms too. One nice one, and the other bathroom with showers was a bit like a jail, to be honest. That was my bathroom. So, I lived there with a girl that we called T. Every night, T and I would have long conversations until the early morning. She was a bit insane, and so was I at the time. I was 19 years old, and I was going through depression and mental issues. So, that already makes the whole story a bit dark, I know, but during the times we all lived there, here are some things that I personally encountered and some that were confirmed by others as well. The first thing was that lights were turning on and off by themselves all the time. One night I left the shower and I was the only one awake. I turned off the light, and immediately as I walked out, I saw that the light came right back on. It gave me shivers, but I didn't suspect anything until the next few encounters. And so the second thing that would happen was the smell of sulfur appearing for like 2 minutes and disappearing just as fast as it came. T and I, we were in the bedroom with the door locked and shut, no windows open, only the air conditioner. I asked my roommate if she had farted, and she said no, did you? And as soon as we stopped talking about it, it left with no trace, but the smell was just terrible. Way too strong to be from a person, really. The third thing was hearing long melodic whistling while I shower. It was not a drain too, because I'd been living there for like 2 months and never heard a noise like that. It was melodic and even had a tune. I am a very spiritual person, so this didn't scare me that much, but I definitely felt uncomfortable, so I left the shower in the end. And the fourth thing were entire objects falling off of a bolted desk that they gave you in the dorms. So one evening, my roommate and I were out of the bedroom. T was in the kitchen and I was in the bathroom, and we both heard a loud bang. When we walked in, everything on our desks was on the floor. We had those tiered desks where there's a base level and shelves above it. T's desk was against the wall of the outside of the building, and mine shared a wall with the other room. I asked the other girls if they were moving around, and they were literally just there sort of studying and relaxing, and they said no, and also none of their stuff was moved. It wasn't just like a few things fell off too. I mean, every single thing was now on the floor, almost like something or someone just swiped everything off to one side. A normal bang would probably cause just a few items to fall off, right? But not everything. I got uncomfortable with these experiences, so I decided to place my solid gold crucifix charm with a depiction of Jesus in the room. I also started praying at night, and weirdly enough, nothing ever happened after that. But man, I feel bad for anyone who stays in that room in the future because it is genuinely terrifying. So my husband took me to the Stanley Hotel for my birthday. We stayed only one night, and when we got there, we joined this ghost tour that they had going on, and they talked about the history of the hotel and whatnot. I leave during the tour to go to the bathroom, come back, and the tour is pretty much done. No biggie though, right? Fast forward to the crack of dawn, and I'm the lightest sleeper on earth pretty much. And I hear this loud scratching at our door, and am immediately wide awake. It stops after about 20 seconds, and I lay back down. And a few seconds later, the scratching starts again. I sit up in bed at this point and was weirded out because to get to our room you had to go through this corridor where our room was, and furthermore, you had to have a key pass to get through the first door, so it wasn't like you could just walk up to our door or anything, and there was nothing outside our door when we went to bed. The scratching, though, was loud and sounded like claws on a door, and you could tell it was coming from the bottom part of the door. I woke up my husband finally and asked, "Can you hear that scratching at the door?" But the scratching stopped the second that he woke up. He thought that I was crazy and laughed. He said that it was probably people outside, and I said no, it was coming from the door. I was adamant that it was the door too because I got close enough to confirm it. I could hear it as clearly as I could hear him. He said that I was just looking for a reason to be scared by a ghost, so I must have imagined it. I was getting annoyed because I never mentioned anything about a ghost. All I said is that there was a loud scratching at the door and was wondering what it could possibly be because, we're in a corridor and it sure as heck wasn't people outside of our door. I was dumbfounded and irritated because I had no clue what it was and it was bothering me. What the heck was that, right? I didn't imagine it. So we went to check it out, and I asked the worker what could possibly be scratching at my door that early in the morning. His eyes got big all of a sudden, though, and he went and got another worker who worked there for a long time. I told him everything, and he said that it was a ghost dog that used to wake people up at the crack of dawn by scratching at their door. My husband chimes in at that point and says, "Oh yeah, you were in the bathroom when the guy was talking about the ghost dog." I could have choked him out, honestly, but anyway, I don't know what it was in the end. I didn't see anything, but I sure as heck heard it. And I had to get all of this off my chest because it's been bothering me ever since it happened. My husband, he still thinks I imagined it, but I know for sure that I didn't. "50 years ago, when I was in high school and college, I taught CPR and first aid classes for the Red Cross in a building that was built in the mid-1800s. I don't know architecture, but I think it would have been called Victorian, I guess. Most of the time, the classes I taught, they were like 10 to 15 people and ended at around 10 at night. After class, I'd watch everybody leave, lock up, and then clean up. Classes were on the second floor, and I'd have to carry the CPR dummies down to the basement for the storage. Creaky stairs, bad lighting, and shelves with stacked up CPR dummies looking like corpses. Yeah, it was a bit creepy. In fact, that basement was just overall creepy as heck. Always felt like you were being watched down there. I'd hear footsteps following me up the stairs and constantly check over my shoulder. While I was in the basement, almost always, I'd hear footsteps upstairs as well. The first time or two times I rushed upstairs to see who I'd forgotten and locked inside, but there was never anyone there, just me in the building. The office staff in the building left at 5, so I almost never saw them, but I decided to get there early to see if the office ladies knew anything about the creepy basement and footsteps. They all laughed at me. They apparently all knew that it was haunted. They even had names for the ghosts. There was a little girl that they'd seen and hear singing. There were muffled and mumbled voices, footsteps, and the toilets flushed on their own. But none of them, and I mean not one of them, would ever go into the basement. Never the basement, they said. Apparently, the Red Cross, they had bought the building from a former funeral home, and the basement was where they did the embalming. I eventually got used to it, I suppose, but the first few times as a 17-year-old, that place absolutely terrified me. I've had many paranormal encounters in my life, whether it be seeing things, hearing things, or even feeling things. My family, they joke that I must have ghosts following me around because it happens so frequently. But we also lived in many haunted places growing up. Crying babies at night, things running around like crazy at 3 a.m, angry banging on the walls when nobody was home but me, and once, even a really tall shadow man that would sit by my bedroom doorway in a meditative pose. But you get the idea. Paranormal stuff gets on my nerves, in fact. So when I recently moved into a new apartment with my boyfriend, and I was very happy that it felt empty, as in no one was there but us, I was pretty chuffed. But unfortunately, that only lasted until last weekend. So it was very late and we had just finished the deed. Yes, necessary backstory, sorry about that, but we were laying in bed. My boyfriend noticed the time, a little after 3 a.m, and jokingly asked if I could feel anything lurking around because it was the witching hour. I joked back that sorry, the ghosts only had a 10-minute window from 3 to 3:10 to do their haunting, and they'd missed their shot tonight. But only a few seconds later, our partly open bedroom door slammed shut violently. My poor boyfriend, who also had very negative experiences with the paranormal, and is honestly more scared of these things than me, was very freaked out. So to relieve some of the tension, I joked that there was nothing to worry about, since it was probably some cranky old man's ghost who was mad that we didn't do just 5 minutes of dry missionary and call it good, and that it probably took him 5 years of stored energy to slam the door like that anyway. But as soon as the words left my mouth, I felt something slam over me, like a shield of air but solid, and for a few seconds I couldn't breathe. That sobered me up quickly and got me properly scared. I very softly whispered to my boyfriend that whatever it was did not appreciate my sense of humor. For the next few minutes, the bedroom door kept opening and shutting in small jerky movements. Eventually I gathered my courage, got up, opened the door and apologized for being offensive. I then firmly added that we were trying to sleep now, shut the door and locked it. And we slept the rest of the night unharassed. Honestly, I think the funniest part was my boyfriend asking to move to the side that I usually sleep on by the wall, so I would be closer to the door, which was absolutely fine by me. It was definitely one of the more interesting encounters, though, that I've had in a while, and I'm sad to say that this house is not empty after all. I'm even sadder to report, whatever or whoever is here, they do not have a sense of humor at all. But I mean, oh well. After the shadow meditation man, whose head nearly touched the doorframe while sitting, this ghost, honestly, is just low-hanging fruit to me. To preface this, I just want to say that me and my wife are both of sound body and mind. We're both military retirees living aboard Camp Pendleton. So last night, my wife was in the garage around midnight painting her toenails. I was upstairs watching X-Men 97. Both of our dogs were with her in the garage. She had her headphones on, but heard the dogs growling and hair standing up on their backs. The garage door was all the way up, and she looks up to see what they were growling at. It's super dark on base at night, and off in a distance, maybe 100 or so feet, she says that she sees two bright white circle lights kind of stacked up atop of one another, one smaller, one a little bit bigger. She says that when she looked up, the lights were initially by a tree and then floated to the center of the field and seemingly began coming towards our house. She says that she hurriedly grabbed the dogs and let the garage door down. She's an East Texas, rough and rugged sort of gal and not easily scared by much. She said that it wasn't a person and that it was just two balls of light floating there. She's not into UFOs or aliens in a big way. She does believe that they exist though. She's just not into researching and seeking info out on them. And honestly, I'm pretty mad because she didn't tell me anything till the morning. She was like, dude, I forgot to tell you, last night this happened. I was low-key sort of heated because I research this stuff a lot and I enjoy it. But what do you guys think she actually saw? Was it just balls of lightning that we hear about all the time as one possible answer for this? Or was there something more to it?